This airplane is a 1930 Brunner-Winkle bird. It was built in Brooklyn, New York in August 1930. It was bought brand new by Charles and Anne Lindbergh early in August. I think it was August 9th, 1930, they bought the airplane. The bird airplanes had a reputation for being easy to fly, and Charles wanted to teach Anne to fly, so he bought this airplane. Like only 2 or 3 weeks later, they took it back to the factory and upgraded it. They put this KB5 Kinner on it, which is a very rare engine. It's the only KB5 Kinner known to exist by anybody I know. They put this engine on it. This is the engine that was on it in 1930. They put these 10-inch wheels on it, and they put a metal prop on it. So then, as they say, Charles taught Anne to fly in it. They kept it for 1.5 years. It went through a bunch of different owners. In 1947, Joe Fischera in Maryland bought it. Before he had a chance to fly it, a freak windstorm blew up and blew it on its back and smashed it up. 5 years later, they had it flying again. He flew it for about 4 months, engine quit, went in the field, went on its back, smashed it up. So he put it in storage, was in the Air Force for a while. He ended up as a senior aircraft restoration technician for the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. When he got to be about 80, which I think was about 2000, he started thinking, I better restore this airplane or I'll never see it fly again. And so he started working on it. He finished it in 2012. He had lost his medical. He was 92 years old. They had a family friend come and test fly the airplane and do some flights on it. As far as I know, Joe got 1 ride in it and then he died. They needed somebody to take care of it, so I've basically been taking care of it since. I think that was 2015, I think. So I've been doing the annual inspections on it, and eventually sold the airplane to a family friend, Mike Pangia. He left the airplane in the hangar at Anne's house so she could get up in the morning and open the door, and there's Joe's bird still in the hangar at the house there. It hasn't flown a lot. It's only flown 2 or 3 hours a year, probably the last few years. Anne, the widow, is 92. Mike, the owner, is 80, and you know, I went to Mike, I said, we really need to get the airplane to Oshkosh while Anne is still around to appreciate it, get a story about it. So the second day I made it to Dewey Davenport's airstrip in Ohio. On Wednesday, I left in the morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning. About an hour later, I was near Winchester, Indiana, and I noticed the RPM went down a little bit. And I opened the throttle and it came back, and then it went down again, and I opened the throttle, and pretty soon I was full throttle, 1500 RPM, hanging in the sky, engine skipping and stuff, and I actually peeled off to land in a hayfield, where then I saw the county airport was about 5 miles ahead, and I thought, oh, there's a hangar and people and cars and tools, and so I decided to try to get to the airport, and I made it to the airport and was taxiing in, and I leaned my head out to the right to look around, and the number 2 cylinder sticking out on the top right there, the top of one of the rocker boxes was shaking about a half inch on the whole top, not supposed to move. Shut down, tied the airplane down, came around, there was a giant crack in the cylinder head. My phone didn't have reception, but there was Wi-Fi in the office. I got on Instagram. Andy Hines from Dayton, Ohio called Dewey because my phone wasn't working and said, hey, there's a guy in Dayton that has a Waco INF with the same engine and probably has spare parts. So Dewey called Brad Templin. Brad said, yeah, I have 6 or 7 spare heads, and he went and looked at them and picked the best one out. And I finally borrowed a phone, and I called Brad up. I said, yeah, I understand you have a spare cylinder head. He said, it's in my hand. I'm standing next to my Grumman Tiger. I'll be there in a half an hour. And a half an hour later, Grumman Tiger landed. Brad got out, walked in the hangar, handed me a cylinder head, turned around and walked away. I said, what do we owe you? He said, get it flying. We'll figure it out later. Long story short, 8 o'clock that night, I took off and did a test flight again. Ready to go. The next morning, I flew it to Broadhead. And then the next day after that, I flew it up and landed at Pioneer Field here. It's really a good flying airplane. As far as these kind of biplanes go, it's a 3-seat biplane, 2 people in the front, 2 passengers in the front, pilot in the back, typical of a late 20s, early 30s biplane. With only 100 horsepower, it's no ball of fire. I have taken passengers up with it on a really hot day. I won't take a big guy up in it. It's a good design. I enjoy flying it. I've got time in at least one other bird, and they're enjoyable airplanes to fly for what vintage they are. Yeah, the fact that it's that it was the Lindbergh's airplane, I believe it's the only airplane that was owned by the Lindberghs that's in private hands now. There is, as I say, always a weight of responsibility. It does ratchet up, but being Lindbergh's airplane, I'm of the philosophy that airplanes need to fly, and it's interesting, Joe Fischera, he worked for the Air and Space Museum, he said to everybody that would listen, this airplane does not go to the Air and Space Museum because it's a static museum. This airplane flies as long as it's possible for it to fly. We're not sure where that means it will end up. Someplace where there's a big organization that can take care of it and assure that it keeps flying for people to enjoy it. I think about it when I get in it. It's a valuable airplane, it's a very historic airplane, but my philosophy is same as Joe's. The airplane should fly, and I'm willing to take the risk of flying it